Are you thinking to buy the Cashflow board game, but you don't know if it's actually worth it? Are you also wondering if you can actually learn how to get rich by playing the Cashflow game, just as Robert Kyiosaki claims? Well, in this video, I'll give you an honest review of it, explain how it all works, and show you how to play the Cashflow board game. I will also include tips and tricks of the game, which will help you have a much better experience should you decide to get it and play with your friends and your family. If that's what you're after, then you're in the right place. So stay tuned and watch this video until the end, as you don't want to miss anything. Hi guys, my name is Marius and welcome to Money Employed. If this is your first time here and would like to join our community of money employers and finance junkies, then make sure to subscribe. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like because it really helps out the channel. So you've probably heard of the Cashflow game from watching YouTube videos or reading blogs on personal finances, or if you're like me, you know about the Cashflow board game from the all-time favorite personal finance book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kyiosaki. For me, this book has had a huge impact on the way I think about money and debt, and not just from a personal point of view, but also from a business perspective. Although it's not the most technical book out there on this particular subject, I do believe that it's by far one of the most influential. I'm not sure which version of the book you've read, and if you haven't read the book yet, what are you waiting for? But anyway, in the version of the Rich Dad Poor Dad book that I've read, the Cashflow game was introduced very early on and it really caught my attention. And it did so by how complex and revolutionary it sounded to be. The Cashflow board game was developed by Robert Kyiosaki and his wife Kim back in 1996 in an effort to create a way to teach people financial literacy and increase their financial IQ in a fun way. It was also aimed at giving people the opportunity to learn how to invest without the fear of losing money. But have they succeeded in doing this? We'll talk more about that in this video. So here we have the game. What I'll do in this part is I'll unbox the game for you guys so you can see what it comes with, what it includes and stuff like that. So let's just get into it. So this is obviously the board, okay? As you can see, it has two tracks. You've got the rat race track in the middle, and then you have the fast track on the sides. And I'll get back to these in just a moment, okay? So let me just unbox the rest of the things, and then I'll go in depth on every single aspect of the board. Next up, what we have is the game instructions manual. So this is quite a bit of a read. I will not go through the whole thing. Obviously, this is not the purpose of the video. I don't want to bore you guys, but whenever you get the game, if you do decide to get it, you can have a read through it. I will explain some of the things that are mentioned in the game manual, but for now, I'm just gonna put it on the side, okay? Next up, what we have are two of the most important and most used documents in the game. So you have the income statement, okay, and the cash ledger. And I'll get back to these in just a moment because the next thing I wanna show you are the profession cards. So in the game, you have multiple professions, okay? Every single player will have a different profession. So once you receive your profession card, what you will have to do is look at what's written on it, yeah? All the information in terms of income, expenses, assets, liabilities, and all that. And what you will do is you will transfer these over onto your income statement, okay? So that's where you will use these. We have the small deal cards, okay, and these go right here. And basically these are just opportunities for you to invest in, and I'll get back to those later as well. Next up are the big deals, and this is exactly the same as the small deals. They're again opportunities for you to invest. It's just that these ones are a bit more expensive. Next, we got the market cards, okay, and these go over here. And basically these cards normally affect either you or all players at the same time, okay? But again, I'll come back to these later on in the game. And finally, we have the doodad cards. And these are basically the most annoying things you can have in the game because every time you get one, it's always something that you have to pay and you cannot avoid them unless it's mentioned on the cards. But again, I'll explain those in a second, okay? So next up, what we have are the dice, okay? The game comes with two of them, but most of the game you will play with only one die. You can only use two dice in specific circumstances, and I'll get back to those later in the game, okay? I'll just leave them here for now. And finally, we have the game pieces, okay? These ones, they look like rats, and I find them really funny. I don't know, they're quite hilarious, but that's how they look like. They're all in different colors. and there's 6 of them. So now what I want to talk about is what is the main objective of the game. Right, the main objective of this game is to get out of the rat race. And the way you get out of the rat race is by increasing your passive income to the point where it either meets or exceeds your expenses. So let's say, for example, in the game, your expenses are $3,000. The moment your passive income reaches $3,000 or more, you're officially out of the rat race. And the way you increase your passive income is you buy cash flowing assets, such as real estate or businesses. And then the secondary objective of the game, obviously once you escape the rat race, you will go on to the fast track. And on the fast track, your objective and the way you win the game is by increasing your cash flow day by $50,000. Yeah, I know it sounds a bit daunting, but just stay with me. So once you escape the rat race, let's say for example that you escape with $3,000 in passive income. Once you get onto the fast track, what you will have to do is multiply that amount by 100, meaning that you will enter the fast track with $300,000, okay? And your goal will be to reach $350,000 in cash flow. And you do that by buying the businesses on the fast track. But let's look a bit more in what actually the rat race and the fast track are. So the rat race is pretty much the way poor and middle class people play the game of money, where they go to a job to work and exchange their time for money so that they can pay for their wants and their needs. And then once they've run out of money by paying those wants and needs, in order for them to have more money, they have to go back to work, make more money, pay those bills, and repeat the cycle. And that's why they're stuck in the rat race, because they constantly need to exchange their time for money. And that's why it's called the rat race. And then the fast track, what it represents is the way the rich play the game of money, where they don't work for money. What they work for is to acquire assets that produce passive income for them so that they don't have to exchange their time for money over and over again, just to be able to pay for their expenses in terms of wants and their needs. And the whole game is based on the philosophy of the Cashflow Quadrant, which is also another book by Robert Kyiosaki, which I highly recommend you go and read, which basically looks at the way different people make or earn money. And I'll put an image on the screen so you can see what I mean. So on the left hand side of the quadrant, you have the E for employee and S for self-employed. And these people make money by exchanging their time either in a job or in a small business that depends on their work to make money. For example, a freelancer that probably does work on Fiverr or on Upwork or anything like that, they still need to trade their time. The right side of the quadrant, on the other hand, where we have B for business and I for investor, focus on creating or buying assets that produce income for them by leveraging other people's money, by leveraging other people's time, and also by leveraging other people's knowledge. And this is basically where you want to get in the game as well. You want to get onto the right hand side of the quadrant. This will mainly happen once you get onto the fast track, because this is where you buy the very good deals that the average people do not have access to. So I hope that clears things out about what the rat race is and what the fast track is. Now let's look at what you will need to play the game, because there's also another few things that you will need. For example, I highly recommend that you use pencils when you play the game, because especially the income statement, you will have to update this constantly. Every time you buy an asset, you will have to add it. Every time you sell it, you'll have to erase it. And your passive income will change, your expenses will change, your total monthly cash flow will change. Everything will have to be updated constantly. So I highly recommend you use pencils instead of pens, because using a pen will just be a nightmare. Alternatively, what you can do is you can actually laminate these and then use dry markers, which also makes a lot of sense because you don't have to reprint these every single time that you run out of them. And if you don't want to laminate them and you prefer to just print them out every single time, I will put some links in the description where you can download all these in terms of income statement, cash ledger, and the income statement that you will use when you get onto the fast track, because this is different from the one you will use whilst you're in the rat race. Also, if you do use pencils, obviously what you will need are erasers. It only makes sense that you have to erase what you've written with something. And finally, what I would recommend to use is a clipboard, so that you always have something stable to write on, or a cardboard or a magazine or whatever, unless you're playing at a table. But because we don't play at the table, usually what we play is on the sofa bed. We open it up and everyone sits around, so it's very handy to have a clipboard where you can actually write nicely on them. You know, it's very hard to write something on a piece of paper if you put it on a sofa bed because it's too soft. So yeah, those are some of the things that I would recommend you guys use if you want to play the game. Okay, so how do you go about playing the game? As I mentioned earlier, the game can be played with up to 6 people, okay? So there's 6 of these colored rat game pieces that you can use. I'll put all of them on just so you guys can see them. But yeah, once everyone's picked their game piece, one of you guys will have to shuffle the profession cards, okay? So just give them a good shuffle and then distribute them to each and every single player. And then once the players receive their profession cards, the next thing you want to distribute are income statements and cash ledgers. So you have to give one of these to every single player. And then once they receive this, they will have to use their profession cards to fill in all the details onto their income statements. But here's the thing, the person to your right, yeah, will always have to check the numbers that you write on your income statement and on your cash ledger. So at the beginning of the game, when you fill in all your details, the person to your right has to check them to make sure that they're all accurate. And as you make changes and update the figures on your income statement and your cash ledger, you always have to give it to the person to your right to check and make sure that you're not cheating. Then once everyone's done, every single player will have to roll the die to see which one gets the highest number, and the person who gets the highest number obviously starts the game. And now let me just go over all the spots that you can land on. I will start with the 3 payday spots, which are the orange ones. So every time you go over payday or you land on payday, you will need to add the cash flow to your cash ledger. And the cash flow basically is the total income that you have at that point, be it from the salary plus passive income or just your salary, minus the total expenses. So in this example that I have here for the engineer, the income is 4,900, 0 in passive income, minus 3,200 in expenses, gives him a $1,700 cash flow, okay? So if at the beginning they go over payday or they land on payday, that's the amount they will have to add to their cash ledger. One thing you need to remember with the paydays is if you do go over the payday or land on it, but you do not add your cash flow onto the cash ledger, you will lose that as soon as the next player rolls the die. So just be mindful of that and don't forget to take your paycheck, because you will lose it if you don't. And trust me, you don't want to lose it. Right, next up we have the purple spots. There are 3 of these as well. So the first one is charity. This one, if you land on it, you have the option to donate 10% of your total income at that point in the game. So if your total income at that point in the game is, let's say for example, $4,000, you will have the option to donate $400. But you might think, why should you do that? Because, you know, it's not mandatory. But I would highly recommend you do it, because it gives you the chance to play with 3 dice for 3 rounds. So this means that you have a higher chance of rolling more than 6 and being able to go around the rat race much quicker and collect more paydays, which will obviously give you more cash to then go and invest, okay? And the next purple spot that you can land on is the downsizing. So if you do land on this one, what will happen is, first of all, you will have to pay a full set of your expenses. Let's say your expenses are $2,000. You will have to pay that. If you don't have the money, you will have to take a loan, and I'll get back to the loans later on in the game, okay? But besides having to pay a full set of your expenses, what will happen is you will skip 2 of your turns, okay? So you will put your rat here, and then once your next turn comes up, you will have to move it over here, skip the turn, and then once your next turn comes up again, you will have to move over here because you still have 1 left. Right, and the last purple spot that you can land on is the baby one, which means that if you land on this one, congratulations, you have a new baby. Yay! But the thing with the baby is that it will increase your monthly expenses, and you'll have to multiply the number of babies by the per child expense. So in this example with the engineer, is $200 per baby. So if it's the first baby, obviously the expenses will go up by $200. However, you cannot have more than 3 babies in the game. So once you reach the limit of 3 babies, you cannot have any more. So at least that's a plus, you know, you can't just keep on getting these. Right, next up we have the spots that are related to the extra cars that we have on the board. So first of all, we got the deals, and these are the green ones. You will land on these most of the game. And like I mentioned earlier, these are investment opportunities, and they will differ based on what card you pick. Like if you choose to go for the small deals or you choose to go for the big deals. And the difference between these is that the small deals, the most expensive one of them, costs $5,000 to invest in, okay? And that's the limit. That's the most you will need to pay to invest in a small deal. However, The big deals start from $10,000 and they go all the way up to $200,000 in terms of the amount that you have to put down. So at the beginning of the game, you will mostly focus on taking small deals because you won't be able to finance the big ones unless you take out loans, of course. Next up, we got the market spots, which are the blue ones on the board, and there's only 3 of them. So these are a bit more rare to land on. I noticed that happening a lot in the game, but like I said earlier, these cards affect either you or everyone involved in the game. So for example, if a tenant damages your property, like in this one, you will be liable for it because it's your property. It doesn't refer to everyone else. However, if the card says something like, you know, buyer looking for a specific kind of property, everyone who has that specific kind of property can sell at that point in the game, even though they haven't picked up the card. And then lastly, we have the doodads cards, which thankfully these are only 3 spots on the board as well. They're marked with red, but like I mentioned earlier, these are the very annoying ones where you have to pay no matter what. I mean, there are a few cases like this one, for example. First car for your child, take out a loan if you must, pay $5,000 if you have a child. So if you don't have a child, you can get away without paying this, okay? But most of them, you will have to cover the cost. And like it's mentioned on this, if you don't have the money, you will have to take out a loan. And that can cause you to go bankrupt and ultimately lose the game. So if you're very unlucky and you land on a lot of these, then I'm sorry for you. Now let's move on to the fast track and see how this works as well. So once you escape the rat race, what you will have to do is to roll a die, and you can land on one of these 6 red spots. And if you roll a 6, obviously you will land on 6. If you roll a 3, you will land on 3. But most of these spots that you will land on will cause you to lose money one way or another. However, the only spot that you can land on where you're not going to lose money for sure is number 6, because this is for unforeseen repairs to your properties. But since you don't have any properties on the fast track yet, you won't have to pay anything, because all the properties that you had in the rat race, they're gone. You know, you don't have anything to do that anymore. All your stocks, all your gold, all your properties, they don't apply in the fast track. You don't have those anymore, because now you have the cash flow day, and then whatever properties you buy on the fast track is what you will have. And what happens on the fast track is, instead of collecting paydays, what you collect are cash flow days. And there's only 4 of these on the actual track, as you can see. But like I mentioned earlier, if for example you escape the rat race with $3,000 in passive income, that equates to $300,000 in cash flow day when you get onto the fast track. So every time you pass over cash flow day, you get $300,000. And as you buy businesses on the fast track, the amount of cash flow will obviously have to increase. And you have to increase this to up to $350,000 if you enter the fast track with $300,000, because the objective and the way to win at this point is to increase your cash flow day by $50,000. And a great thing with buying businesses on the fast track is that if you land on the exact same business multiple times, you can buy it multiple times. So if you land on the coffee shop, which costs $120,000 to buy and produces a cash flow of $5,000, you can buy this over and over again. But then obviously multiply the number of coffee shops you have by the cash flow each one produces. So if you buy 3 of them, you will obviously have $15,000 in cash flow from it. So now let me just put these all back in, and then I'll get back to giving you guys some tips on how you can increase the chances of winning, especially if you're playing this game for the very first time. This will be very useful. So the first tip for you guys is to buy low and sell high. If you land on a card where you can buy shares in a mutual fund for $5, definitely buy those, because that's the lowest it will go, and the maximum it can go up to is $40. So if you have the chance to buy shares in mutual funds at $5 a piece, definitely go for it and buy as many as you can, because it will be either you or someone else in the game who will pick up the card where you can sell them for either $10, $20, $30 or $40. I wouldn't recommend you sell at $10. Usually I buy between $5 and $10, but I do not sell them at 10 unless I'm very desperate. So that's the first way you will start making some money in the game. So the next tip relates to the first one, where you buy low and sell high. If, for example, you've just invested in a deal and you're left with no money at all, but you pick up the card where you can buy shares in a mutual fund for $5, what you can then do is to take out a loan and buy those shares at $5, because it's a very, very good deal. And the way loans work in this game is that for every $1,000 that you borrow, you have to pay 10% in interest every single payday, okay? So if you borrow $1,000, your monthly expenses will go up by $100. And the thing with the loans is they're like interest only loans. So you don't pay off the balance. The loan is still there. You only pay the interest on the amount you've borrowed. You can obviously pay this off once you have the money, but just so you know, if you do borrow $1,000, if you pay the $100 for 10 rounds, the loan is not going to go away. It will still be there because you're only paying the interest on it. However, if you do use a loan to buy a good deal, you have great chances of making a good amount of money and still be able to pay off your loan and the interest on it very quickly. Usually what I do is if I do take out a loan of $1,000 and my monthly cash flow is $1,500, as soon as I cross payday, if it makes sense for me, I pay off the loan, so then I reduce my expenses by $100 so I don't have to carry on paying that interest on the loan that I have. Tip number 3 follows up from the previous tip, where you take out a loan in order to invest in a great deal. What this tip refers to is that you should not over leverage yourself with debt. So let's say, for example, your total monthly expenses at a point in the game are $1,000, okay? And your monthly cash flow is $1,500. What I would highly recommend you guys do is leave at least $200 in cash flow for you to cover any downsizing that might happen or landing on a doodad. So in this example, you have $1,500 in cash flow. You should only borrow money up to the point where your cash flow reduces to $200. And that's because if you do land on a purple spot and you get downsized, you will have to pay a full set of your expenses, in this case $1,000. But if you don't have that money, you can take out a loan, increase your monthly expenses by $100, and now you're left with $100 in cash flow. So if it then happens again, if you're that unlucky, you can borrow again and now your cash flow will be at zero. So what I'm trying to say is don't borrow so much money to the point where your monthly cash flow reaches zero and you don't have any sort of emergency way of coping with downsizing or do that. So keep that in mind when you do use debt in the game to buy investments. The next tip actually refers to something I came up with in the game because it's not mentioned anywhere, either in the game instructions manual or anywhere online. I haven't seen it. But basically the way I analyze rental property deals is by return on investment, because what it shows on the card when you pick it up is only the amount of money you have to put down, the cash flow that it produces, how much the property actually costs, and the mortgage. It doesn't tell you anything about ROI. So just by looking at the amount of money you have to put down and the cash flow that it produces doesn't really tell you enough. So in order to calculate ROI, what I do is, like in real life, I take the cash flow, let's say for example $200, multiply that by 12, which represents the number of months. In the game would represent basically the number of times you cross or land on payday. So that means you go around the board at least 4 times because there's 3 paydays in the rat race. And then that gives you $2,400. And let's say that the deal cost you $5,000 to get in. If you divide $2,400 by $5,000 and multiply that result by 100, you will get a return on investment of 48%. And in the game, I've actually went and calculated the return on investment on every single possible rental deal, be it small deal or big deal. And for the small deals, they range between 38% and 150%, and the big deals range between 51% and 108% in ROI. So this is a great way of analyzing each deal that you pick up, because it will give you an understanding of how good it is, if it actually is a good deal or not. And you can even have your own benchmark. Say for example, you don't want to buy any rental properties that make less than 60% ROI. However, here's a bonus tip for you when doing this. If you land on a card which gives you the opportunity to buy a rental property that produces a cash flow of 50%, but your requirement is at least 60%, what you can do is you can choose to sell that deal to one of the other players who might be happy with a deal that produces 50% ROI. And you can even charge them between $300, $500. It really depends on you. Obviously, the more players want that deal, the more you can charge for it, because they will have to outbid each other. So that's a great way for you to make extra cash in the game by just selling deals that you land on that you don't want to buy or cannot buy. So instead of wasting them, you can make some extra cash in the game. So the next tip that I have for you guys is to consider buying rental properties in the game that do not produce any cash flow. Some of them actually have a $0 cash flow, but the reason why I would recommend you buy these if you have the cash to do so is because someone at some point in the game will land on the market spot and will pick up a card where there's a buyer looking for the exact same property that produces a 0 cash flow for you. And what you can do is you can then sell that for a profit. Sometimes you can sell these for up to $20,000 in profit. And mostly you only have to put down like $1,000, $2,000 or $5,000 to get in one of those deals. So I think it's a really good return on investment if you can afford to buy that property at that particular point in time. And then the final tip that I have for you guys is to always buy the multi-level marketing card. There are 2 of these in the game and they cost $500, but what they give you is the opportunity to roll the die every single time you get paid, and if you roll between 4 and 6 you get an extra $500. However, if you roll between 1 and 3 you don't get anything. But as soon as you do get that $500, the card has paid for itself, and then you can use the card for the rest of the game. Every time you go over or land on payday, you can roll the die to see if you make an extra $500, and you can actually buy both of these cards. So every time you go through a payday you can roll the die twice and have a much better chance of winning an extra $500, $1,000, or actually nothing. But still, this card is very good. You can even sell it to another player if you wish so. You can sell it for like, let's say $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, however much they want to pay for it, because this is a great opportunity for you to make extra cash. So basically what you have to do in the game is to find ways to increase your income, to increase the amount of money you have, so that then you can go and buy investment properties that make you passive income, because that's what's going to get you out of the rat race, and that's what's going to help you get onto the fast track and on your way to winning the game, obviously. So those are my tips for you guys. If you have any extra ones that I haven't mentioned, or maybe I don't know of them yet, please make sure to share it with us in the comments. I would really like to know what tricks you guys use in the game to make it easier for you and increase your chances of winning. What I would also like to mention is that you can play this game online as well. However, the edition that's available is the old one, which looks a bit different, and the cards that it has are slightly different. Over there the price per share can go from $1 to up to $50, and if you choose to play online it's for free. You just need to open an account. However, you can also play on an app, but you have to pay to download that app, but I think it's about £1.50 or something like that. I'll leave a link in the description where you can play the game online, and if you want to download it on your iPhone or Android, all you have to do is to obviously go into your App Store or your Google Play Store and just download it from there. Bear in mind that if you do choose to play online, you can play with people from all over the world, but sometimes they can be time wasters because they start the game, you go through it, you're doing really well, and then they just quit and you have no one else to play with. So that's a bit of a bummer. And if you play the game on your phone, on an app, you cannot play with other people unless you actually select humans and you give the phone to every single person. That's the way you can play the game like that, but that's really not that entertaining as it is to play with real people with the real board game, because it gives you the opportunity to actually run the numbers yourself, to do the calculations. Actually, this is something that I forgot to mention. You will need a calculator to play the game. Obviously, you don't want to do all the maths in your head. Also, what you can use is the calculator on your phone. So make sure you have at least one of these or your phone nearby so you can do the calculations. So what's my opinion about the game? Well, you know how they say that this game is like Monopoly on steroids? They're not wrong about it. This game actually exceeded my expectations. I'm really happy with it. Even though it costed me £70 to buy it, I see it as a very good investment in myself, because it gave me the opportunity to start putting in practice some of the things that I was learning about personal finances, investing, and money, and how you can use that to make a much better return on investment and stuff like that. So I highly recommend the game to everyone who is into that sort of things, and if you're watching this video, you're definitely in the right category of people that should play this game. What you will notice from the first time you play, at least the first 3 to 5 games, is you will start to reflect back and understand that the way you're playing the game is the way you actually play it life as well. At the beginning, the very first game that I played, I was playing very safe. You know, I wasn't taking much risk and stuff like that. And I realized that that's how I was in my real life as well. But then I decided to actually go on and take some more risk in the game, because at the end of the day, it's just a game. So whether you win or lose, it doesn't really matter. You're not losing anything. But what I realized is that the more risk I was taking in the game, calculated risk anyway, not being silly with the amount of debt I was taking on, the much quicker I was getting out of the rat race and onto the fast track and on my way to winning the game. So yeah, in my opinion, the game is amazing and it's a great investment you can make in yourself if you choose to do so. Like I said, I'll put a link to the edition that I have down in the description below so you can check it out if you want to get it for yourself. If you think the price is too much, don't worry about it. What you can do is just ask a few friends if they're interested to play the same game, and you can all chip in and buy the game together, and you know, maybe organize a Sunday evening games night where you can play this game. Just bear in mind that it does take between 2 to 4 hours sometimes to play the game, especially if this is the first time, because everyone has to get used to how to fill in the cash ledger, the income statement, and all the things, okay? So the first game will take a while. But yeah, that's what I think about this game. And that is it for this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you have, please make sure to hit that like button and comment your thoughts below. I would really like to hear your opinion about the Cashflow board game. Also, if you want to see more videos on money and finances, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any content that I upload. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.